Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into one of the most incredible processes in all of biology, cellular respiration. This is the story of how your body turns the food you eat into the actual fuel you run on. It's happening inside you right now, and it's amazing. Let's get into it.
So think about this for a second. You eat a sandwich for lunch, and a little while later, you're using your brain to solve a tricky problem. How? How does a turkey sandwich literally become a thought? Well, the answer is a fascinating journey that starts with just one single molecule.
And before we start that journey, you have to meet the hero of our story, ATP. That stands for adenosine triphosphate. This molecule is the whole point of the entire process. It's the universal energy currency for pretty much all life on Earth. Just think of it as a tiny, rechargeable battery that powers absolutely everything your cells do.
To really understand how we charge up those ATP batteries, we're going to follow one molecule of glucose, a simple sugar from that sandwich, as it goes on this wild ride through your cells. We're going to see how it gets broken down piece by piece inside what are basically your body's microscopic power plants.
Okay, so our little glucose molecule's journey has four main stops on the map. First up is glycolysis, which is where the sugar gets split in half. Then there's a quick pit stop called Acetyl CoA formation. After that, we dive into the main engine room, the Krebs Cycle. And finally, we get to the grand finale, Oxidative Phosphorylation, which is where the massive energy payoff happens.
All right, let's kick things off with step one, glycolysis. You can think of this as all the prep work that has to happen before the fuel can even get inside the main power plant. It's all about splitting that sugar.
Now here's something that's actually really important, where this happens. See, glycolysis doesn't happen inside the mitochondria, the cell's famous power plant. Nope, it happens right out in the main fluid of the cell called the cytosol. And that little fact tells scientists that this is an incredibly ancient, fundamental process that predates a lot of other complex cell machinery.
So what do we get out of this first step? Well, think of it like a small business investment. The cell actually has to spend 2 ATP molecules just to get the ball rolling. But in return, it splits that one glucose into 2 smaller molecules, and it walks away with a net profit of 2 ATP. It's not a huge payout, but more importantly, it loads up 2 high-energy shuttle molecules called NADH. We'll be hearing a lot more about them later.
Okay, now it's time to take our new fuel molecules and head inside the mitochondria, the real power plant of the cell. This is where we're going to fire up the furnace with the Krebs cycle and really start loading up on energy.
But before we can jump into the cycle itself, there's a quick prep step. Those 2 pyruvic acid molecules we just made, they get converted into something called Acetyl CoA. This little reaction is super important. It's what releases some of the carbon dioxide that you eventually breathe out, and it preps the fuel for the main event. And this seems like the perfect moment to properly introduce our energy shuttles, NADH and another one called FADH2. These guys are absolutely essential. You see, as glucose is getting broken down, high-energy electrons are released. The job of these molecules is to scoop up those electrons and hold on to them, kind of like little rechargeable batteries. They're storing all that energy to be cashed in later. So, after 2 terms of the Krebs cycle, one for each of our acetyl CoA molecules, what do we have? Now, you might look at this and see only 2 ATP and think, that's it, but that's not the real point of the Krebs cycle. Look at its main job. It fully charges up a ton of our energy shuttles. We walk away with 6 NADH and 2 FADH2, all loaded up and ready for the grand finale.
And that brings us to the main event. Step 4, oxidative phosphorylation. All the hard work, all the prep, all the shuttling, it has all been leading up to this moment. This is where the cell is about to get a truly massive payoff.
All those little rechargeable batteries, our NADH and FADH2 molecules, have now arrived at their destination. It is officially time to cash them in for that huge ATP prize we've been waiting for.
So the big question is, how does this actually happen? And you might have noticed, we've gone this whole time without talking about something you do every single second, breathing. So where does oxygen finally make its grand entrance? Well, right here.
This whole process goes down at something called the electron transport chain. It's basically a series of protein machines, like an assembly line, built into the inner wall of the mitochondria. Our charged-up NADH and FADH2 molecules arrive here and drop off their high-energy electrons, which then get passed down the line from one protein to the next.
And at the very end of that assembly line, who's waiting there? Oxygen. This is its critical job.
It's the final electron acceptor. It grabs those used-up, low-energy electrons at the end, combines with them to form water, and clears the way for more electrons to run down the chain. Without oxygen, the whole assembly line would get backed up and grind to a halt. This is the reason you have to breathe.
So as these electrons are getting passed down the chain, the energy they release is used for one very specific job, pumping protons across the membrane. This builds up a huge amount of pressure, kind of like water building up behind a dam. And then those protons are allowed to surge back through a special channel, an incredible enzyme called ATP synthase. As they rush through, it spins like a water wheel, and that spinning motion is what cranks out ATP after ATP after ATP. It's absolutely brilliant.
And just look at the payoff. It's not even close. The first couple of stages together gave us maybe 4 ATP, but this final stage, the one that requires oxygen, churns out around 32 ATP. It is unbelievably efficient, and it is what allows complex, energy-hungry creatures like us to exist.
Okay, so let's pull the camera back from the microscopic level and look at the big picture. Why does this tiny, complicated molecular engine actually matter to you in your day-to-day life?
Well, it's pretty much everything. It's the fundamental reason you have to breathe oxygen every second of every day. It's how the glucose from your food becomes the primary, safest fuel source for your brain. It even explains that burning feeling you get in your muscles during a hard workout. That's your body struggling to get enough oxygen to keep this process running at full speed. From a simple blink to a deep thought, this is what's powering you.
And here's one last fascinating little tidbit from our source material. Remember those all-important energy shuttles, NADH and FADH2? Well, your body literally builds them using B vitamins from your diet, specifically vitamin B3 and vitamin B2. So when people say B vitamins give you energy, this is what they're talking about, right at the molecular level.
So the next time you take a breath or enjoy a meal, just take a moment to appreciate this incredible microscopic dance that's happening billions upon billions of times a second inside every one of your cells. It's an elegant, powerful, and ridiculously complex system that really just makes you appreciate the intricate energy that powers life itself.